You said you had to go before the morning light, but every little word still echoes in my mind. The coffee's getting cold, your shadow's fading slow. I know I should move on, but I don't want you gone. Stay a little longer, just another minute. Let me keep this feeling before it disappears. Stay a little longer, even if it's nothing. I just like the way you make the silence sing. The city keeps on moving like nothing ever changed, but every crowded street still whispers out your name. Maybe it's foolish, maybe it's true. I still find pieces of you in everything I do. You looked at me and I forgot what I was saying for a second. Everything just faded, the noise outside, the rush of every day. Somehow you made it all drift away. Right here beside me is where I want to be, not chasing tomorrow, not running through dreams. Right here beside me, everything feels clear, like I've been waiting to find you here. I don't need fireworks, I don't need perfect lines, just your hand reaching for mine. Right here beside me, that's enough tonight. The world can't keep turning, we'll be alright. You left your sweater in the backseat of my car. 3 weeks later, it's still where you are. I keep meaning to bring it back, but every time I see it, I lose track. You don't know it, but it makes me smile, like you're still here for a little while. Maybe that's crazy, maybe that's true. I never thought I'd miss something that belonged to you. And every street light feels a little warmer since that night we drove around for hours. You left your sweater, I kept the feeling too. You fell asleep halfway through the movie. Your head leaned over like you trusted me completely. I should've watched the ending on the screen, but I spent the whole time looking at you instead. The room was quiet, the city outside disappeared. For a moment, everything felt clear. You never knew what was running through my mind while you were dreaming, right there by my side. If love looks like anything, maybe it looks like this. A simple little moment I don't wanna miss. We got on the wrong train that night. Missed our stop by almost 20 miles. You laughed so hard you couldn't catch your breath. Said maybe getting lost wasn't so bad yet. We walked for hours through streets we'd never seen, talking about places we'd never been. The funny thing is I don't remember where we went. I only remember how happy you looked then. Some mistakes disappear, some stay forever. That run train ride might have been my favorite ever. Your hair was a mess when you opened the door. Sunlight on your face across the kitchen floor. You said good morning like you always do. Half awake, still beautiful. The coffee was ready, the radio played low. Nothing exciting, nothing anyone would know. But if I could keep one memory forever, I'd probably choose that morning together. Some days change your life without making a sound, like watching you smile in an oversized gown. I found a note you left inside a book, folded between pages I almost never took. And just 3 short lines written in your hand. Nothing important, nothing you had planned. It said, don't forget your umbrella, with a smiley face below. Funny how the smallest things can stay with you the most. I read it once, then read it twice again, like somehow every word would bring me back to then. Back to rainy afternoons, sharing coffee by the window, talking about places neither of us planned to go. You always laughed before finishing a joke, and somehow every room felt lighter when you spoke. Maybe memories are strange, maybe that's what they do. They hide inside ordinary things, then suddenly find you. Now every time I open up that page, the years disappear and nothing feels changed. It's only a note, only paper and ink, but somehow it's enough to make me stop and think. Some people leave and slowly fade away, but some stay quietly in little things they say. We missed the last train home and didn't seem to care. The station lights were glowing, nobody else was there. You sat beside me on a freezing metal bench, talking about your childhood like we had all night left. The city felt different after midnight came around. The noise disappeared and every street calmed down. You told me things you never told your friends. I listened closely, not wanting it to end. The taxi could have taken us anywhere we needed, but somehow neither one of us wanted to leave it. Maybe some nights know exactly what they are before they even start, before they leave a scar. The first light came slowly through the dark and painted golden colors across the empty park. You stretched your arms and smiled at the sky. I remember thinking that I could stay here my whole life. We missed the last train home, but honestly honestly it's true. If I could do it all again, I'd miss it too. Your side of the couch still sinks a little lower, even though it's been months since you came over. I noticed it today while cleaning up the room. Funny how small things can bring back something huge. There was a blanket you always pull too close, and a mug in the cupboard you somehow like the most. Nothing here is broken, nothing looks out of place, but every corner somehow still remembers your face. You used to steal the remote and choose terrible shows, the endings weren't either. I just like being there, sharing time together. Now the evenings arrive, just like they always do. The sunset hits the window the same way it used to. But sometimes I still turn, like you're sitting there, before remembering slowly you're not anywhere. Some memories hurt, some simply stay warm, like finding an old jacket in the back of a drawer. Your side of the couch is only furniture now, but sometimes my heart still forgets somehow. I found a receipt in the pocket of my coat from that little diner by the river road. The date was faded, the total barely showed, but I remembered everything the second that I looked. You ordered pancakes at 10:30, said breakfast tasted better after sleeping in. I spilled my coffee, you laughed at me, and somehow turned an accident into a memory. The waitress asked if we wanted anything more. You looked at me and said maybe one more hour. I didn't know then how much I keep. Tiny little moments people usually leave. Funny how a piece of paper can take you back in time to a place that doesn't exist anymore, except inside your mind. The receipt means nothing to anyone but me, but some things become priceless because of who they're with. You stepped outside to listen to, wrapped in a blanket, calling out my name. The city lights blurred across the wet streets. Everything felt slower, everything felt sweet. You leaned against the railing, watching cars below, telling me stories that already been told. But I listened anyway, like it was the first time, because every word sounded better when it came from your side. The storm kept falling, the night kept moving, but somehow that balcony felt bigger than the world. Some people chase adventures across oceans and skies. Mine was standing beside you, watching headlights pass by. Years from now, I might forget the weather, but I'll remember how we stood there together. Oh na na, start. somehow that moment never really did. There's a photo booth picture tucked inside my drawer. The corners are bent now more than before. You were making faces, trying not to laugh. I was looking at you instead of the camera. The first picture's blurry, the second one's worse. The third one caught us laughing, the fourth one might have worked. You said we looked ridiculous, I said maybe that's true, but somehow it's my favorite picture because it has you. We weren't celebrating, nothing special that day, just killing time downtown before heading separate ways. Funny how the moments you never planned to keep become the ones you revisit in your sleep. Every now and then I find it again and smile for a second like you're still my best friend. It's just 4 little pictures on a fading strip, but somehow an entire season still lives inside it. You missed your stop because we were talking. The bus kept moving, but neither of us noticed. You were telling me about a dream you had, something about the ocean and a yellow house. I remember the details better than I should. Some conversations stay longer than they could. When we finally looked up, you started laughing first. Said getting lost wasn't bad as long as it wasn't alone. So we got off together, 2 stops down the road, walking somewhere unfamiliar, with nowhere we had to go. The streets weren't important, neither was the place. I mostly remember the look upon your face, sometimes the wrong direction turns out exactly right. That's what I think about whenever I remember that night. You borrowed my hoodie one cold November night. Said you'd give it back the next time we met, but weeks kept passing, and somehow I didn't mind, because every time I pictured it, you were wearing it. The sleeves were too long, you always rolled them up and somehow made an old sweatshirt look better than it should. I remember the parking lot, the wind in your hair, you pulling the hood tighter, pretending you weren't cold. Maybe that's why I never asked for it back. Some things feel better when they stay where they are. Now every winter, when the weather turns, I think about that hoodie and the lesson I learned, that love isn't always big dramatic scenes. Sometimes it's someone smiling inside your favorite thing. And honestly, if you still have it somewhere, you can keep it. I saw your name light up my phone for half a second before it was gone. I stared at the screen like think it might explain why hearing from you still feels the same. It wasn't important, at least that's what you said. When I called you back a few minutes later, you laughed and apologized. Said your pocket must have pressed it, but somehow that tiny mistake stayed with me all day. Funny how 1 second can change the weather inside your head without asking permission. Maybe some people just have that effect, even when they don't mean to. You still leave something behind. It was only a missed call, nothing more than that. But somehow I smiled the whole way home. You bought flowers from the corner store, the cheap ones sitting outside the door. Said they look lonely standing by themselves, so you brought them home and put them on the shelf. A week later, most of them were gone, but one small yellow flower kept holding on. You pointed at it like it won a race, smiling way too proudly for a tiny little thing. That's what I remember more than the flowers, the way you celebrated ordinary moments. Some people wait for something extraordinary. You found happiness in things everyone ignored, and honestly, that's what made me fall. Not the flowers, just you. I got there early, like I always do. Picked a table by the window without thinking about it. Then I caught myself looking at the empty chair across from mine, like you were on your way. The waiter came over, asked if someone was joining. I almost said yes before laughing at myself. Funny how habits stay long after people leave, like they don't understand the story already changed. The coffee got cold, the afternoon moved on. The sunlight shifted slowly across the floor. I sat there alone, but not completely, because somehow memories still know how to keep company. I still save you a seat without meaning to. Some things take time to unlearn. You spend an hour looking for one book, then left with 5 like you always did. I followed behind, carrying half the stack, pretending to complain the entire time. You'd read random pages before checking them out, just to make sure the ending felt right. I never understood how you chose stories, but somehow you always found the good ones. The library closed, the lights grew dim, and neither of us noticed until someone told us years later. I still walk past that building and think about that day every single time the doors slide open. I found an old voice message buried in my phone from a random Tuesday years years ago. You were laughing before you started talking, so the first few seconds didn't make any sense. You called to tell me something unimportant. I can't even remember what the message was about, but I remember your voice, exactly the way it sounded, like no time had passed at all. Funny how memories fade, but certain sounds don't. Somewhere inside me, that laugh stayed the same. I listened once, then listen again. Not because I was sad, just because it felt familiar, like walking through an old neighborhood you used to know. It started raining halfway through the walk. You opened your umbrella without saying anything, then moved a little closer to make room for me, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The streets turned silver under the street lights. Cars passed slowly across the wet road. We talked about nothing the entire way home, and somehow it felt important. Years later, when rain hits the pavement, I still think about that night for no particular reason. Maybe some memories just choose their own weather. You grabbed my drink without looking, took a sip, then immediately froze. I started laughing before you even realized what had happened. Your face said everything. You hated coffee without sugar. I drink it black like some kind of psychopath. At least that's what you said. Every single time the barista looked confused while we switched cups back. It's such a small memory, barely worth mentioning, but somehow it's the one that always comes back first. Maybe because nothing special happened, and that's exactly why it felt real. You always wanted the window seat, no matter where we went. Bus, train, airplane, it didn't matter. You liked watching the world pass by, like every stranger had a story. I'd usually sit beside you, pretending to read, while secretly listening to whatever you were thinking. You pointed things out most people missed, tiny details hidden in plain sight. The trip itself never mattered much. You somehow made the journey interesting. That's what I remember now, not where we went, just who I went with. We sat in the car long after arriving, because neither of us wanted the music to end. The destination was there, the engine was off, but the song kept playing through the speakers. You said, just one more song, then another one started, and somehow an hour disappeared. We talked between verses and stayed quiet during choruses, like we'd done it 100 times before. Some nights don't need plans or big dramatic moments. Sometimes they're just a parking lot, a good song. honestly, that was enough. You wrote a grocery list on the back of a receipt. Half the words were missing, the handwriting incomplete. Milk and bread were easy enough, but one line simply said something sweet. I asked what that meant, you couldn't explain. Said you'd know it when you saw it. An hour later, you came back smiling, holding cookies you didn't need. You always had a way of making ordinary days feel like they were worth remembering later. Now every supermarket feels strangely familiar, because somehow you still live there, between the aisles and little moments nobody else would notice. We stood together, waiting for the light to change, neither saying much, neither needing to. The traffic moved, the city kept rushing, but somehow everything felt slow. You pointed at a dog across the street and laughed harder than the joke deserved. That's what I liked about being with you. The way simple things always seemed enough. The signal turned green, people walked around us, but for a second we forgot to move. Funny how happiness can hide inside moments most people walk right past. The departures board kept changing overhead. People hurry past, dragging their suitcases. You kept saying it wasn't that long, just a couple months, maybe less. I nodded like I believed it, even though I didn't, trying to memorize everything about that moment. The way you held your coffee, the way you tucked your hair back, the way you smiled when things felt difficult. The final call echoed through the terminal, and suddenly time moved too fast. Some goodbyes are loud, some are quiet. Ours was somewhere in between, still waiting at gate 23. Inside my memory, you ordered another coffee, even though we should have left. The afternoon was already gone. The sun was getting low, but neither of us mentioned the time, like ignoring it could somehow help. The cafe grew quieter, one table at a time, until it felt like we were the only ones left. You told a story I'd heard before, but I listened anyway, just to hear you tell it. Some conversations don't need new words. The comfort comes from who is saying them. That second cup cost almost nothing, but somehow bought us another hour. We took the long way home for no reason at all. The streets were empty, the air was cold. The last street light at the end of the block cast a shadow. The fire grand plans, just little things you hoped would happen. A small apartment, a bookshelf by the window, a dog that slept all day, simple things that somehow sounded perfect. The street light disappeared behind us eventually, but I still think about that walk sometimes, because looking back, it wasn't really about the future. It was about wanting to be there when it arrived. Your picture showed up out of nowhere tonight, caught me smiling under city lights. I thought I was fine, I thought I moved on. Then one little memory proved me wrong. I almost called you just to say hello, just to hear your laugh like a year ago. I almost called you when the night got quiet. Funny how your name still feels like home. Maybe we're over, maybe we're through, but some songs still sound a little like you. I almost called you, then I let it go. Some feelings stay even when they don't show. The movie hadn't started, the lights were still dim, people were finding seats all around us. You handed me popcorn and immediately stole some back, claiming that made it fair. Somehow the previews played, but neither of us watched. Too busy talking about everything else. The film eventually started, the room fell silent, but my favorite part was the time before it. The waiting, the conversations, the feeling that the night still had possibilities. Some stories happen on the screen, others happen in the seat beside you. And honestly, those are the ones I remember most. You challenged me to a game you knew you could easily win, and somehow I agreed. The arcade lights flashed, the music was too loud, and neither of us took any of it seriously. You celebrated every point like a championship victory, and blamed the controls whenever you lost. People probably thought we were ridiculous, laughing that hard over something so small. That's the thing about good memories, they're really impressive from the outside. Years later, I don't remember the score. I only remember the sound of your laugh. I saw you first across the street, standing outside a bookstore, looking at your phone. The light was red, cars moved between us for a moment. It felt like a movie scene. Then you looked up and smiled immediately, like we'd only said goodbye 5 minutes ago. Instead of months, we crossed at the same time, met in the middle and started talking. Without thinking, the city disappeared, the noise faded away, and somehow everything felt familiar again. Some meetings are planned, some just happen, but the best ones usually arrive unannounced. The bell above the door rang every time someone entered. You were already inside, looking at pastries like they were important decisions. The smell of fresh bread filled the whole room and somehow made everything feel slower. You picked the same croissant you always picked and stole a bite of mine before I could stop you. The woman behind the counter knew your order by heart and greeted you like an old friend. We sat by the window, watching the morning pass, talking about things neither of us would remember later, except for one thing, the feeling of being there with you on a perfectly ordinary day. The bell above the door rang every time someone entered. You were already inside, looking at pastries like they were important decisions. The smell of fresh bread filled the whole room and somehow made everything feel slower. You picked the same croissant you always picked, then stole a bite of mine before I could stop you. The woman behind the counter knew your order by heart and greeted you like an old friend. We sat by the window, watching the morning pass, talking about things neither of us would remember later, except for one thing, the feeling of being there with you on a perfectly ordinary day. The Ferris wheel lights were already glowing before the sky turned completely dark. You won a stuffed bear at a game you cheated, then acted surprised. When I called you out, the music was loud, the food was terrible, and somehow everything was perfect. We shared one lemonade because the line was long, and spent half the evening singing songs we barely knew. You took pictures of absolutely everything, the sunset, the lights, even the paper tickets. Years later, those photos still make me smile, not because they're beautiful, because they remind me of you. Some summers disappear, this one never did. You handed me a book, said read chapter 3, then call me when you're done, you'll understand. I started that night, curled up by the window, thinking I'd read a few pages before bed. 3 hours later, I was still awake, turning pages, looking for more. Every note you left in the margins felt like a conversation across the paper. Sometimes I'd stop and smile to myself because I could hear your voice in my head. The story was good, but honestly, my favorite part was knowing you loved it first. Now every bookshelf feels a little different since you left a piece of yourself there. We could have been home in 10 minutes flat, but you pointed left and said, let's go that way. The sun was setting across the rooftops, turning every window into gold. You talked about work, I talked about nothing. Somewhere in between we kept laughing. The streets got quieter, the sky turned pink. Neither of us noticed how far we'd walk. Some destinations matter, some don't at all. That night was never about getting home. It was about having one more reason to stay together a little while longer, even after the day was done. You showed up late, like you always do, holding sunglasses and a coffee for 2. The market was busy, people everywhere, fresh flowers and music floating through the air. You stopped at every stand, looking at things you didn't really need, but somehow wanted a basket of peaches, a handmade mug, a tiny little plant you promised not to kill. We spent an hour walking one small street, and somehow it felt better than anywhere else. Maybe happiness isn't far away. Maybe it's mornings like this, a paper cup of coffee and your hand in mine. The sun stayed high, the crowd moved on, but I wish that day would take a little longer. You found a bench at the edge of the hill, said the spot looked good and I trusted you. The city stretched out below our feet, cars moving slowly like tiny lights. We sat there talking about future plans, the kind people make when they feel safe. The sky changed colors one layer at a time, orange into pink, pink into blue. Nobody rushed, nobody checked the time for a while. The world felt simple, the sun disappeared, the evening arrived, but neither of us moved right away. Some moments ask you to stay a little longer. This was one of them.